everyone, how you doing today? My name's Kirsty, aka Beth Bookish, and on today's video I'm going to be doing the reader's profile tag. This was a tag created by Hilary from Book Bustle. She's reasonably new to BookTube herself and created this as kind of like a BookTube newbie tag, but it isn't the BookTube newbie tag, it's like her own version of. And I was tagged to do this by Jess from This Kiwi, and I thought it'd be a fun one to do because obviously I've talked about my reading preferences and things like that, but it's been a while since I've really done a tag about it, so I thought it'd be a fun thing to do. There are 10 questions. I'm going to try to not take forever to answer each one, but we all know I love a good ramble, so we shall see how that goes. But the very first one is probably going to be the one that will take me the longest to explain, and that is, what for you makes a good book? I had a couple of similarities to Jess, so obviously go check her responses out as well, because she has, different things to me. But a couple of the ones that we definitely agreed on was that it has to have a plot that keeps on moving. It doesn't have to be full on action all the time, but it does have to have something going on at all times. Otherwise, I am just going to lose interest. If a book suddenly halfway through switches POV and then we suddenly feel like we're restarting the book with a new character or things have started up again, that's not really going to keep my attention. If we suddenly have a massive 3-chapter long info dump, that's going to get me bored. Or if it suddenly goes, oh, we're now traveling and it's been a month and they've traveled half a mile. One of the reasons I ended up DNFing City of Brass was because of this. It just kind of felt that after about the first 3 or 4 chapters, everything just kind of went stagnant for me. And it felt more like a history lesson. And the actual characters that I was interested in and wanted to see their travel and their development, we were just told what was going on after it had happened, and it was like, oh really? I'd rather have had more time with those characters and had more of the detail at that time. So I wasn't the biggest fan, and yeah, it just felt like it went a bit too stale for too long for me. But probably the biggest thing that is guaranteed to give me a 5-star rating is if a book gives me a physical reaction. If a book makes me laugh out loud a lot, if it makes me cry, if the atmosphere of the book is off the charts, and if it's a creepy book and I genuinely start to leave my lights on at night because I'm then that is almost guaranteed to get a 5-star. I can read a book with a bad plot. I can read a book that isn't very atmospheric. I can read a book that maybe the writing isn't the best. I cannot read a book if I don't have an instant connection with a character, or if by the end of the book the characters are, if they're not believable, if I don't connect to them in some way, if I don't fall in love with them, whether it's because I'm supposed to hate them or love them. A book has to have characters that I just really connect with and really enjoy reading. Otherwise, again, that is a guaranteed I'm not going to continue. Clear imagery is another big one for me. What makes a good book? I don't mind flowery writing. I don't mind sort of descriptive writing and metaphorical stuff. But if it gets overdone, I don't enjoy that. I prefer the writing to just be clear and just telling me as it is. Give me some description, but don't go into too much depth, because otherwise you're going to start losing my interest. And if I'm spending more time trying to figure out what the hell you're trying to describe or tell me than actually getting on with the book, I'm not going to enjoy it. And then the final one is surprises. I love it when a book surprises me, whether it be that a character death happens I wasn't expecting, or an author's just not afraid to go there, or there's some unveiled secret that I didn't see coming. I enjoy figuring things out, don't get me wrong, but one of the things, certainly with having ADHD, is we're very good at picking up on the small details, but quite often a lot of the big things get kind of missed in our brains. And for me, especially when it comes to reading, there are so many times where it's the big secret and the big reveal, I get blown away because so many of the teeny tiny little things that I picked up on, I'm yay! And then when it comes to the big victory, I'm oh. Question 2, what are you currently reading? I have a couple of things because it is the first of the month right now. it's not going to be when you see this, it's going to be quite a while later. But there are because it's the start of a new month, there's a lot of stuff that I'm about to start. But there are a couple of things that have come across from last month. For one, I'm listening to the audiobook of Where Dreams Descend by Janelle, I want to say. I'm probably wrong. Wait. Oh, I was kind of right. Janella Angelis. I am currently about 2 hours into that, and I am currently quite enjoying it. And I'm reading that for a vlog that I'm doing, where I'm reading friends' favourite books to find out how compatible we are. And so I'm currently reading that for the first one of those, but I am also reading for another person their all-time favourite, Wolf Song, by TJ Klune. I'm enjoying it a bit more now that the characters have started to be aged up a bit. I'm like, okay, I'm now finally getting behind this. So I am currently reading this one. Question 3, what is the last book you didn't finish and why? Where did I put that stack of books? My last DNF was The Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren, and I didn't like it because I felt the characters were very juvenile, acting very childishly, unnecessarily judgmental, and I also didn't like the unneeded Harry Potter references and the fact that the main character thought that because he understood a Harry Potter reference that made him super like in depth with books, and I was just like, no. There were so many things I did not enjoy about it, and I just DNF'd it. Number 4, what obscure book do you wish other people would read? Now, it's kind of difficult to judge what is an obscure book because for someone who never reads fantasy, any of my fantasies would count as obscure to them. For someone who never reads romance, a lot of the romances, and obviously there is the monster smut, which even if someone reads a lot of romance, that is still kind of obscure. Do I wish more people read it? It's a weird one because it's like, do I even wish I read it? But I did think more along the lines of manga when I think about obscure, because let's face it, Japan tend to be a lot more obscure with the things that they come up with. So I did think of 1 book and 2 manga. The book was A Blade So Black by L.L. McKinney because it's obscure in that it's Alice in Wonderland, and Alice in Wonderland is pretty obscure anyway. But I just really liked this take on the Alice in Wonderland story and how it centres around BIPOC characters, and I like the idea of Wonderland being this nightmare verse and that the nightmares are coming into our world, and I did find it quite obscure but really, really awesome. But for manga, the 2 that I picked, one is a romance and one is not. First is Sweat and Soap. It's a very sweet and wholesome romance. However, it does centre around the main character who has a condition. It's not called it in this, but I know it from personal experience. It's a condition called hyperhidrosis, and she has a problem with sweating and excessive sweating, and then she meets a guy who falls for her, and he actually really loves her natural scent, and it doesn't faze him. But it sounds really creepy, and the concept sounds like this is going to be really messed up Japanese kind of thing. But it actually ended up being a really super cute and wholesome book, and Ren has now read pretty much the whole series and has said that it just holds up throughout. And then the other obscure one, and I love it for it's got obscure humour, and that is The Way of the House Husband. This is obscure because we follow Tatsu, who is ex-Yakuza. He's now a house husband, but every task he approaches with the mentality of still being Yakuza. And it's just so funny because the people around him are absolutely terrified of him. But there's like a scene where the police see him and he's got a suitcase and he's trimming his plants to take seed cuttings to go and give to other people. And obviously the way he packages them and the way that he's carrying them, it looks like it's a drug deal. And so the police are like barge into this party that it turns out it's like there's a gathering of these housewives, and they just barge in to arrest him for drug dealing, and it's like they're plant clippings, and it's so funny. And just the way he approaches tasks and the way he talks is just so funny, and I love it, and it is very obscure. Number 5, what is the longest book you've ever read? I have 2. In fact, the one I thought was the longest isn't. I thought House of Earth and Blood was the longest, but this one was only 800. So it's actually the other one that I grabbed that is somewhere. And that is Winter by Marissa Meyer. This one was 813 pages long. And honestly, I thought it was going to take me like a week, and I managed to read it in 2 days because once I started reading it, I could not put it down. And I loved it so, so much. 6, if you could have a dinner party with 5 fictional characters, who would they be? This one, I was like, okay. Because my initial thought was anyone from like the Psy-Changeling series. And then I was like, do you know what? Actually, I know a book series where it centers on 5 major characters. No, it doesn't. It's 6. Fuck. It's 6, not 5. So that kind of takes that one. I was going to say 6 of Crows, but it's literally in the title that it's 6. So, failing that, instead, I'm going to go with Julian, Maritza, and Yadiel from Cemetery Boys, and Kel and Lila from Dark Shades of Magic. I just feel like that combination of characters, it would be so funny. It would just be chaotic as well, and it would just be like regaling that Kel and Lila would just be like talking about their experiences, and I just imagine Julian would be trying to make it a competition as to who's got the better stories. It'd be like, you know, they've gone to multiple worlds, they've travelled between parallel universes, and Julian will just be like, I died once, you know? I just feel like he would be absolutely making it a competition, and Maritza would be like egging him on, and Julian would, and Yadiel would just be kind of like trying to stop it from coming into a full argument between everybody, and Kel would just be sat there just watching it all unfold with like this smile on his face, just letting Lila pop off. I just think it would be absolute chaos, but also in the best kind of wholesome, cute way. And I can just see them all being best friends afterwards. And Lila totally would get all of them drunk, even though they're underage. She would absolutely just encourage it, and it would just be so funny. I could have gone really in-depth and meaningful there, but I just went with what would actually be a really fun, especially for someone who doesn't enjoy those kind of things and going to meals with big groups of people. If it's going to happen, it's got to be chaotic. 5 books you'd want if stranded on a desert island. This one was so freaking difficult, I'm not even going to lie. And I'm still struggling to think. But I would take Cemetery Boys. I would take the Dark Shades of Magic trilogy. And my 5th and final pick would be Caressed by Ice by Nalini Singh, because it's my favourite in the Psy-Changeling series. I would prefer to take a couple of them and cycle through. But if I could only take 5, those would be my 5, because it's kind of got a mix of everything that I love to read. And I know that I could read those books over and over and over again and still love them. 1 book you could not put down. And for this, I've gone with, wherever it's gone, I've gone with King's Rising by C.S. Pacat. I read this in 1 day at the start of April, and the series has now gone onto my favourite shelf, so it's definitely one. C.S. Pacat's writing was just so captivating in this, and just the build-up with the characters and the relationships and everything was just so well done. I had the most amazing time, and I really can't wait to reread this at some point. 5 books or authors you will never read. I had a bit of a rough one with this because I was kind of like, I feel a bit mean saying I will never read these, but then when I looked I was like, actually there are a few. So the first one that I came to mind was Colleen Hoover. Nothing about her books intrigues me, and there's a couple of problematic things that she's done that I'm just a bit like, I just would not feel comfortable reading her books. Taylor Jenkins Reid was one that I was interested in. The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. I even owned it for a while, but after a while I was like, I'm just not interested, and none of her other books have ever interested me at all and have appealed, so she's one that I will probably never read. Stephen King, I don't really read horror anyway, and anything I've seen of his, like movie wise, I've just been kind of like, I don't get the hype, and I just have no interest in his writing or his books. And then just ones that I generically would not read. We have Nicholas Sparks. I don't tend to read books that are going to make me cry, so I will avoid his books. And who is the last one? John Mars. No interest whatsoever. And then the final question is probably my favourite, which is, if you were to write a book, what would it be about? In case you didn't know, I actually am a writer, or I want to be a writer. And I am currently in the midst of creating NaNoWriMo for, well, it was originally meant to take place this month, but I've postponed it until July. But I'll link the video if you want to check that out, and if you are also a writer who wants to join in. But I have a few projects. I've got one that I've been working on for about 7 years now, which is originally started out as a Viking kind of time travel thing, where it was like a woman who ended up in the Viking period. I've since decided to turn it into just purely a Viking romance trilogy. However, it needs so much work. Every time I look at it, I want to kind of cry. So that is currently on the back burner for quite a while now. Then we have an Alice in Wonderland retelling that I'm working on, where Alice and the Mad Hatter had a child. Unfortunately, Alice had to come back to our world and was then unable to return to Wonderland. And because she's cut off from the magic of Wonderland, it's turned her kind of insane. And so when her daughter is older, her mother gets kidnapped, and she realises that all of her mother's stories about Wonderland are true, and that her father did not in fact abandon them. And so now she has to go to Wonderland to find her mother. Only when she gets there, asks people where Alice is, like the great hero of Wonderland, and nobody knows who she is because they've all been cursed to forget. So not only does she now have to find her mother and her father and everyone else, she has to do it while none of them remember who Alice actually is. And then my most recent one, which is the one that I'm currently working on and is the one that I will be putting the most into over the next year, is a steampunk fantasy inspired by League of Legends Arcane as well as Treasure Planet, and features a set of twins who were separated as children, have grown up very separate lives, and are now thrust back together when it comes up that maybe the circumstances around their parents' death weren't what they seem, and maybe their uncle isn't the man they thought he was, and that the world that they live in isn't all it's cracked up to be, and the progress that the world is making may actually be killing everybody. That is my current work in progress, and that's the one that I'm going to be focusing on, trying to get the first draft done of by the end of this year. So yeah, those are what I like to do. For this tag, I am going to tag the Reading Wren, aka my love, because they said they were interested, so they are tagged. I'm also going to tag, because I need more people to watch his videos, I'm going to tag Jonah from Words from the Void, and I'm going to tag, let's go with someone who I haven't tagged before. I'm going to tag Leandra, the TBR0. I don't think I've tagged her in anything before, but if I have, I apologise. But I'm going to tag Leandra because I think it'll be interesting to see what she says. So that is the Reader's Profile book newbie tag. I'm obviously not a book newbie, but it's fun to just sort of have a bit of a think about those kind of things for the first time in a while. I hope you enjoyed that video. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. Also, don't forget to check out my Patreon that I've just recently launched, especially for the writing side of things. If you are a writer, then please come join us over there. And I hope you're all good. I hope you're staying safe. And until next time, bye.